Hello, everybody. I take my daughter to school every single morning. She's in the 5th grade, and, we get to talking about things. Sometimes we drive in silence. That's how cool she is. We don't have to talk all the time. And for some reason, the other day, we got to talking about our worst fears, and she told me, which is crazy because it's mine too. I mean, she is my daughter. She said, "Dad, my worst fear is somebody coming into our house, invading our home." I said, "Honey, are you afraid of that? Why do you feel that way?" And she's like, "No, I'm not afraid of it. It's just something that, the thought crosses my mind, and it's something I would never want to happen." It's funny because that's even though we live in a pretty safe neighborhood, relatively speaking, it's also mine as a father and husband. It's also my kind of biggest fear too. And the stories that I'm going to share with you today are something that I wouldn't wish on anybody. Aurora, Colorado. You're going to see a clip of the chief of police in Aurora, Colorado, absolutely divulging and revealing damning evidence, a phone call that he had with the Biden administration about Tren de Aragua and the Venezuelan gangs that have absolutely laid siege on that city. Also, I've got a lot to cover with you, so sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, grab your favorite snack or what have you, because we're also going to be talking about Luigi Mangione, the individual who's indicted just today by New York City's Alvin Do Nothing Bragg, 3 counts of murdering Brian Thompson, who's the CEO of United Healthcare. We're also going to be talking about NCAA President Charlie Baker, who gets absolutely grilled by, you know him, I know him, we both love him. I think he should run for president, Senator Josh Hawley. American Airlines has a new DEI policy. We're going to talk about that. And then the best argument Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can make, Scott Jennings absolutely leaves the CNN panel stunned when he talks about how we trusted the science and that became a religion. And wait till he says what he says about RFK Jr. Also, Van Jones admitting, I can't imagine what the liberals, I can't imagine if Obama saw this or heard this or Clinton's. They must have just been sitting with their jaw on the floor. Van Jones admitting on camera, quote, "Donald Trump is smarter than all of us," end quote. I'm going to play for you that clip. It's absolutely amazing. Also, Mayor Eric Adams of New York City absolutely stuns a room full of liberals. Wait till you see what he said about Luigi Mangione and the leftists in America. Oh my God, it's one of the best clips I've got to share with you. But first, check out this breaking story. 15 Venezuelan illegal aliens detained. Remember when they fact-checked Donald Trump, our president, and said, "Oh, no. There are no Venezuelan gangs. There is no border crisis. The city of Colorado, they're not eating dogs. They're not eating cats in Springfield. They're not doing all these things." Remember all these fact checks? This, my fellow Americans, my fellow global citizens, is vindication personified. Watch this. Breaking story: 15 Venezuelan illegal aliens detained in Aurora, Colorado after a robbery, kidnapping, and stabbing attack in an apartment complex. And then I'm going to play for you what the chief of police said about his phone conversation with the Biden administration. Holy mackerel. Check this out.
Police are still executing search warrants here at the Edge at Lowry Apartments after they say a man and a woman were kidnapped and beaten by between 13 to 15 people in what police described as torture. Now, all of this started at around 8:45 p.m. last night. They say the man and the woman were in their apartment. They were taken, bound, and then beaten with a pistol. The man was even stabbed. The suspects then burglarized the victim's home. Now, the victims were released and police were called at around 2:30 a.m. The victims are now at the hospital receiving treatment for what are said to be non-life-threatening injuries. Now, police arrived at the apartments and found 15 people in one apartment alone. Most of the people in that room match the description of the suspects, and 15 people have since been detained. Police say this is 100% gang-related, but they're not sure if it's TDA.
This is without question a gang incident. I don't know which gang they are affiliated with yet. It might be TDA. It could not be TDA. We will determine that and we will find that out. But right now, as I said before, it is incredibly hard to identify specifically as TDA because there is no specific markers, there is no specific identifiers. Unless they self-identify as TDA, I am not going to say that they are TDA.
Yeah, the reason why there's no markers, the reason why there's no identifiers or trackers is because that's exactly how the Biden administration wanted it. Now, watch this. Unbelievable, amazing, brazen. I mean, I think this is so courageous and brave of this chief of police. I just absolutely commend him for his courage, and I applaud him. Watch as he states this at a press conference about what he engaged in with the Biden White House. Watch this.
It was a male and a female. They were accosted by approximately 13 to 15 armed individuals. They were pistol whipped, they were beat, they were mistreated. One of the male was actually stabbed, he had a stab wound. So does that fall in the category of torture for me? Yeah, it does. There is a high assumption that they may be affiliated with the TDA gang. I had a discussion with an individual from the White House, and that occurred back on September the 23rd, I believe. And that person basically told me that, hey, once these immigrants get across the border, that's all we really care about. And to me, that's a problem.
Wow, those are...
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? He had a conversation with the White House, and all they said was, look, as long as they get across the border, we're good. We don't need to track them, identify them, document them, worry about them. We're not going to look at their background, screen them, vet them. As long as they get... This is conclusive evidence, everybody, of how much this administration... I'm telling you, the Biden crime syndicate... We dodged a bullet with phony in chief Kamala. They don't care. I remember, how many times did I said this? How many times have I said, not only do they not love America, they don't even like America. I've worked with these people. I know these people better than anybody. They are the absolute evil of the earth. Because they come with this facade of we love you, we care for you, peaceful transfer of power, democracy, law and order. They don't mean anything. I mean, they don't mean anything they say. This is high treason, everybody.
Are powerful words. That was the police chief in Aurora, Colorado, detailing a nightmare inside the walls of an apartment complex known to be home to members of that notorious Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua. More than a dozen suspects breaking into an apartment where they tied up, pistol whipped, and even stabbed two innocent victims. I can barely believe it as we say.
God bless our borders, our Tom Homan. God bless President Trump. God bless and protect J.D. Vance and the entire crew who are going to restore America to sanity again, safety again, and the whole 9 yards. I can't wait for January 20th. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. I really, really want to hear from you. Our next story here, this is a big win, I think, for America, and something I hope we're going to see a lot more coming. You guys know how much I've talked about DEI being the absolute parasitic cancer that has infected our land. American Airlines has just announced that they are going to end all DEI practices. You can see in line 2 down there, I'll read it for you. American Airlines agrees that placement goals under Executive Order 11246, utilization goals under Section 503, and hiring benchmarks under are not to be interpreted as a ceiling or floor for the employment of particularly groups or persons. American Airlines will assess its employment practices and take appropriate measures to address identified problem areas and remedy the unlawful discrimination. They have agreed that they are done with DEI, and I think that is a huge breath and sigh of relief for America. I don't know about you, but I don't really care what my pilot looks like, what their sexual orientation is, what their gender is, what their color, their skin, ethnicity. I don't even care what religion they practice. Can they fly the plane? That's all we care about. That's what we voted for on November 5th. and we need more of it because it's still out there. So tap the thumbs up down below if you love the fact that American Airlines have just ended their DEI venomous ideology and hiring practices. I know I am. Here's our next story. Scott Jennings, who you guys know, I love Scott Jennings. I know you do as well. He says the best argument that RFK can make for his Health and Human Services nomination is to let science actually science again. And I just love the way that he says this. RFK Jr. met with senators today. He said it was good and productive. And I just wanted to share this quick clip because I think Scott Jennings is a genius. Check this out.
Number of things going on today. Number one, RFK hit the right note on Capitol Hill on the polio vaccine. Polio vaccine's fine. The boss, Trump, laid down the marker. We're not touching the polio vaccine. This was a frenzy over the last few days. This was totally put to bed today. So that's number one. Number two, if I were in their shoes, I would just simply say everything we do is going to be based on science and evidence-based decision-making, because that's all anybody really wants to hear. And if I were further advising RFK and Donald Trump on vaccines or anything else, I would say, I'd like for science to go back to be science, because during COVID and during the last few years, science became religion. You know, when we're putting people up on pedestals and making prayer candles with their image on it and sewing pillows with their face on it, that's no longer science. That became a religion. So if I were in their shoes, I would say science is going to rule, evidence-based decision-making is going to rule, and that's how we're going to make all our decisions. I also think it's important for us to remember, why are we here at all in this moment where people are questioning the public health regime? And it is all out of COVID. Everything comes from COVID. Things we were told that weren't true, things about the vaccine that we were told that weren't true. This has caused people, in the past, folks might have just accepted this sight unseen. Now, I think it's legitimate for Americans to say, are we being told the absolute truth by the supposed experts? I don't have a problem with those questions. But millions of school children, millions of people's small businesses, millions of lives were totally upended on things that ultimately we deeply regret.
But it wasn't necessarily all because of science. And I think what we do a lot of
It was because we were lied to about the science.
Well, I mean,
well,
let me just say this.
6 feet?
If I would
100% right. 100% right. Even Fauci himself admitted, the criminal of them all, that all of the social distancing and measures, mask measures, et cetera, was just all kind of made up on the spot. So I just love that clip. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I just think Scott Jennings is just, I mean, CNN should be offering this guy a multiple $million contract. Because he's literally the only reason that network is even worth watching, and their ratings have plummeted. I don't know if you know this or not, but the Food Network passed CNN. People would rather watch, Grandpa Irving make some matzo balls than, I don't know if they even do they have a Jewish cooking show on the Food Network? But anyway, people would rather watch Pasta Primavera than Don Lemon. Well, he doesn't work there anymore. Or even worse, maybe Katie Collins, who's, man, she's a nasty person. Quite frankly, probably the nastiest person out there, which is why I watch Professor Nez, who's the greatest, most honest reporter out there. He's not a nasty person. He's a great guy, good-looking guy. Thank you, Mr. President. I love you. We are so back. Okay, this next clip, watch as the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, absolutely leaves an entire audience of radical liberals totally flabbergasted with his comments on Luigi Mangione, who just recently, Alvin Do Nothing Bragg, the DA who's gone after Trump without any clandestine motives. I mean, his one motive is just to get Trump, essentially. He was just indicted for 3 counts of murder. One even being described as a terrorist count, act of terrorism. So this guy's facing, life behind bars, if not worse, depending on what his sentence is. But watch what New York City Mayor Adams says about this guy that leaves this crowd absolutely besides himself. And I think it's going to ring a familiar chord, because your boy Nez has hearkened to quite the same admonition of higher education. Watch this.
Think about the shooter. Ivy League, grew up in an affluent household. His manifesto clearly is showing some signs of hating. Our children are being radicalized. I said this over and over again. And everybody's like, what are you talking about, Eric? Our children are being radicalized to hate the America, to hate the country that put them where they are. This person had all that one wants to have, but he hated everything to the point of shooting someone. And we better deal with the radicalization of our young people. And, people could, they could complain that I'm saying it, but I'm seeing it. I'm seeing our bench is hating the team. And we better start acknowledging and focusing on that. And so having dance parties, celebrating the death of someone, I don't support that.
Yeah, the guy was a father of two, a husband, a father, and you've got these radical extreme leftists who I could not agree more. I've been saying it. If you're an OG here at Nez Nation, how long have I been saying it? How long have I been talking about, look, I don't just call myself professor for kicks and giggles. I've been there. I've been behind enemy lines, inside the lion's den. I know how they operate. I know how they think. DEI woke ideologies have infected higher education almost irreparably. I don't know if there's any coming back. I've said this many, many times. I think the entire institution of our education and learning, hopefully the Doge brothers, Vivek and Elon, will look into this. It needs to be completely dismantled, destroyed from the ground up, and rebuilt from the ground up, period. It's that bad. I'm telling you, I've been there. We're going to see more of this, but you have these radical extremists actually getting tattoos. They're getting tattoos. They're eating the dogs. I sound like that. They're literally getting tattoos of this Luigi Mangione. They're going to rallies. They're wearing shirts that say Free Luigi. Can you believe this? And isn't this what we saw over the last year at all of our campuses? Things that we never thought in a billion years we could ever imagine, that harken back to World War II, Nazi concentration camps where Jewish students weren't even allowed to enter campus. We're talking, these are not just, this isn't a third world country. This is us, the United States. We're talking UCLA. We're talking Columbia. I mean, and the list goes on and on. Harvard. The anti-Semitism, the protests, the radical Antifa Palestinian protests. Granted, there's all sorts of craziness happening in the Middle East. Thank you, Biden. Thank you, Kamala, for doing absolutely nothing. I completely agree that there's death, chaos that could have been avoided. Our universities have turned into, they've been breeding grounds to radicalization, to NYC Mayor Eric Adams' point. Would love to get your thoughts on this. This is a story that hits really close to home with me because I've seen it over and over. I hope to God come January 20th, 2025, we'll see a big, big change because it needs to happen. Okay, I just absolutely love this. If you believe that boys should be in women's locker rooms and playing women's sports, you're not going to like this clip because I think Senator Hawley nails it. And let me know where you stand on this too, by the way. I have a feeling I know where you stand, but you know what? Again, I'm always open to all viewpoints. So if you have a very, very radical viewpoint, just back it up. If you engage in critical thinking and critical thought, I will respond. But links, spam, and ad hominem personal attacks, I don't bother with that. So check out, this is Charlie Baker, head of the NCAA, getting grilled artfully by the guy that I talk about a lot, who I think should make a run for president. I think he would make an amazing president. Our boy from Missouri, Josh Hawley, Senator Josh Hawley. Watch this.
Have guidelines that instruct them what the best practices are, and your guidelines say that biological men can go in and use the women's locker rooms if they want to. What the women want has nothing to do with it. They're not mentioned in here at all, correct? Correct. It's right here. You just reaffirmed them in May of this year. I've got them. I'm reading them. I've got them off your website.
I believe our guidelines give people optionality with respect to how they choose to use their facilities. And many,
what does that mean? Optionality. What it says is transgender student athletes will be able to use the locker room, shower, and toilet in accordance with their gender identity. That means men will be able to use the women's locker rooms. And as Riley Gaines and others have testified before this committee, that means if a man, a biological man, wants to use their locker room, they just have to accept it. Or else the women have to go somewhere else. They've got to go find an alternative. Why is that fair?
We told the local folks who've hosted our tournaments they need to create accommodations for the people who are playing.
You know, so it's the feds on the one hand, it's the locals on the other hand. The only person who doesn't seem to bear any responsibility in this is you and the NCAA, who are the governing body. And your testimony here today is you're not even subject to Title IX. Mr. Baker, I can't tell you how disappointed this makes me, but not just disappointed, frankly, infuriated for the student athletes who are suffering because of your policies, and you won't even defend them. You won't even take responsibility. It's outrageous. It's totally outrageous.
As a father who has a daughter that obviously I love and treasure, and a wife that I look up to every single day, raised by powerful women, why do we even have women's sports if we're going to continue with this insane charade? This is exactly what we voted against. It's not that hard. If you're biologically male, you can't play women's sports. You can't go into women's bathrooms. Again, the world is not supposed to acquiesce to you. You need to adapt to the world. I don't care what you do in the privacy of your own home. Just stop shoving it down the throats of society, my kids, my families, and millions of other families across the world. It's enough. We're sick of it. We voted against it. Our resounding voices were heard. Enough is enough. But I'd love to get your thoughts. Let me know where you stand. And then last but not least, I've got a treat for you. CNN's Van Jones. Listen to what he says as one of these, I don't even know who this guy is, some whiny podcasting liberal. Seems to be completely confounded. How in the world did Trump win? How did he do it? And watch what Van Jones says. I got to give credit to him. I'm not a fan of CNN, obviously. I'm not a fan of liberals. I'm not a fan of hypocrites. I think they're all vermin. But I got to give Van Jones credit. I got to give credit where credit's due. What his response is actually worthy of my respect and maybe perhaps yours, but I want to get your thoughts on it after you watch this clip. Check this out.
How the hell did Donald Trump figure out the mainstream media is the fringe and the fringe is now the mainstream? How the hell did Donald Trump figure out? I mean, Joe Rogan is obvious, right? Like, we knew the guy had a big audience. It's not like we were like stunned, but like, how the hell was he, the 78-year-old guy who doesn't even have a computer and still like writes handwritten notes? How did he become the guy who cracked the code on, to your point, running a cultural, I don't even want to say campaign, running
it was a movement. Look,
heading a cultural movement versus a campaign.
Every one of your people knows Elon. Listen. So I mean, everybody keeps, I mean, the problem is you have a framework in your mind that how can Donald Trump? Guys, can we cut it out? Donald Trump is not an idiot. Donald Trump, let me just be very clear. Donald Trump is smarter than me, you, and all critics. You know why we know? Because he has the White House, the Senate, the House.
Totally agree.
The popular vote. He has a massive media ecosystem bigger than the mainstream built around him and for him, and a religious fervor in a political movement around him. And his best buddy is the richest person in the history of the world, and the most relevant Kennedy is with him. This dude is a phenomenon. He is the most powerful human on earth and in our lifetime. And we're still saying, well, how was this guy? We look like idiots to ordinary people.
You're totally right.
I just absolutely love that. I hope you enjoyed that as well. I mean, you guys are just going to keep collecting L after L and slamming and banging your head against the wall, wondering. I mean, it's very, very simple. It's got nothing to do with right, left, Trump, Republicans, conservatives, MAGA, liberals, radicals. It has to do with authenticity. It has to do with practicality. It has to do with listening. You guys never listened to the people. And the American people were listened to by this man, and they have spoken. By the way, if you want to get this 100% made in the USA original merch, made in the USA, just there's a link in the pinned comment, show notes, and description, or just go to professornez.com/merch. One last thing before we go, I just want to say it's just absolutely criminal what they're doing to Elon, how they're vilifying him. They're just slinging every pejorative you can think of at him. This man literally created the only free speech venue, the digital town hall, for everybody to come and speak their piece, speak their mind, when he bought Twitter, which was $44 billion, wasn't even worth $44 million at the time, and turned it around and it is now X, which, by the way, follow me on X because I'm there, Professor Nez. I post a lot of stuff on there that I can't post anywhere else. The guy is the Leonardo da Vinci of our time. He has invented products, goods, and services, the likes we've never seen. He's probably going to be he's on the forefront of pioneering interstellar travel. His innovations, what he's done at SpaceX, Tesla, and other places, deserves medals to be flung around his neck, the likes of which he can't pick his head up. They should be so many. I think history is going to look back and be like, man, I can't believe they went after this guy the way he did. Why? Because just like Trump, he's a disruptor. He disrupted and he unclinched their grasp on power, which is all they care about. But I can't wait to get your thoughts and your comments on today's show. Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to tap that like button, please, if you don't mind. Sign up for our free newsletter in the pinned comment, show notes, and description below. Get your 100% made in the USA merch. You can also find that below. Check out these videos coming up on the screen right here. If you haven't seen them already, tap my face to subscribe and follow. And as always, may God bless you and may God bless the USA. I'll see you soon.